is your name, rank, and occupation?
My name is Lemuel Muhammad. I'm the Grandmaster of Jigokan Jiu-Jitsu, and at this time, I operate with the title of Professor.
How did you get into martial arts?
I got into martial arts with the help of my mother, who found a martial arts instructor by the name of Sensei Gregory Myrick, who was willing to allow me to train without having to pay tuition, because at that time in my life, living with my mom, as a young boy, we were very, very poor and unable to afford, the martial arts lessons. And so my mom found him, and he was willing to allow me to become like an apprentice to him and work at the school and clean up, basically just cleaning up the school before, after class. And that's how I compensated him for my martial arts lessons.
Who was your first real teacher, not just in technique, but in life?
Well, my first real teacher in life was my mother. My mother, very, very wise woman, very loving woman, very interested in educating her children, not in just what is considered, your standard education like in school, but she wanted her children to be knowledgeable about a great many things. So my mom was my very first teacher, period.
So what habits from training show up most in your everyday life?
Well, I believe that the habits that show up mostly in my everyday life from training martial arts are my striving for excellence and my patience. I strive for excellence in everything that I do, whether it is drawing a picture of an eye or driving safely to and from wherever I go, how I dress. I strive for excellence. As far as patience, which I believe is right along with that for me, my striving for excellence is not always easy for others, because other people may not necessarily strive for excellence. They may not even desire it. They may not even understand how it's achieved. And so being, so focused and stringent on that, I had to learn patience. So patience through the martial arts has allowed me to graduate others along, in their training and causing them to desire to want to be excellent in the martial arts, but in any endeavor that they have in life. So my striving for excellence and my striving for patience, those are the two things I think most carry over into every aspect of my life through my martial arts training.
What part of your personal journey made Jigokan necessary? Not as a choice, but as something that had to exist.
That's a very deep question, because I believe that Jigokan had to happen because of my training. I've been in martial arts now for 40 years, and I spent the last 30 years or 31 years with my teacher, and I gave him 30 years of my life, my time, my love, my involvement, engagement in his system. And so after many, many years of training, you begin to see things in the martial arts, in your training, that lead you and guide you to, your ultimate destination, I suppose. And so Jigokan had to live because it was in me. It was coming out of me. And so it was just a matter of time for me to just present it to the world in an official capacity. So it had to be, because my journey took many different turns. It traveled many different paths, all leading me inexorably to this point where Jigokan is now officially it's a little bit over a year old, but I started actually developing the system back in 2008. But I did not actually present it to the world until 2025, last year, January.
What truth about martial arts did you discover that you couldn't unsee? And how did that truth shape Jigokan?
These are some very, very powerful questions. You know, I think that the truth that I could not unsee that led, you know, to Jigokan and that really kind of shaped my mind is that, you know, you can't unsee or unhear, you know, no way as a way. You can't unsee or unhear, you know, it's not enough to just be willing, you must do. It's not enough. I mean, you can't really unhear or unsee, you know, certain truths about, you know, how martial arts should be from the mind and the heart of the person. If you are really, truly into martial arts, there is no way that you can start off, you know, in this space, be engaged, working hard, and then stay in that space physically, mentally, or spiritually. You have to graduate. There's just no way you can stay where you start. If you stay where you start, you didn't do anything. So it's just the truths that come, I think mostly from my spiritual or religious background. A lot of that teaching shapes me as an individual, and it shapes everything else that I'm a part of or that I'm involved in. I can't approach anything without my Islam being involved in it. I can't talk to anyone without remembering that I'm a Muslim and then thinking about who they are. These are things that they are like the umbrella over everything else that is in my world or in my life. So that's the real truth that I couldn't unhear or unsee that led me into all these other truths.
What are or were you willing to walk away from, whether it be people, beliefs, identity, in order to create Jigokan?
Well, you know, I don't really feel like I had to walk away from anything, people, beliefs, or anything to allow Jigokan to live. What I believe I had to do was I had to accept what God was giving me for the world. And in accepting my role or my mission, inevitably it comes with some of the losses or the seemingly I'm not over here or I'm not over there. But you know, when you stand up for a cause or a mission or something that God is feeding you to bring to the world and it's your time, you know, everybody's not going to be in agreement with that. Everybody's not going to want that for you. Everyone's not going to understand your movement. It may seem that it is rogue or disloyal, but you got to focus on the ultimate aim, and only God knows the heart of the person. You know, since we announced Jigokan, there have been a lot of people who embrace it, love it. It's a breath of fresh air. The forms, the techniques, everything is really, really being received well. But then there's a whole another set of people out there who may disagree with it or believe that it's somehow a dishonor of what came before it. I don't worry about stuff like that. I just worry about making sure that I'm true to me, that I'm not motivated by ill intent, negativity, And I believe that if my glass is a dirty glass, or Jigokan as a drink is a dirty drink, people will choose not to drink from it. You know what I mean? They'll drink from a clean glass, whatever that is, whatever they perceive it to be. And the last point on that is, I just accept what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us, and that every knock is a boost. So whatever I seemingly may have walked away from, or people that I may have distanced myself from, it's only because, like any good parent or mother in particular, when she gives birth to a child, she has to do everything for that child, and she has to be proactive in protecting that child from dangers that the child has no idea about, that the mother has a more comprehensive understanding about, and that mother is willing to do whatever it takes for that child to live. And that's how I see the advent of Jigokan. It's my baby. It's my child. I'm that mother of that child, and I have to protect it. And so in that process, yes, maybe I am over here. And maybe I do look like maybe I have walked away from this or that, but I don't worry about that, because all that matters to that mother of that child is that that child lives.
How has Jigokan changed you as a man, not just as a martial artist or teacher?
Jigokan has changed me a lot, you know, as a human being, as a person, because as a grand master of a martial art, you know, you're responsible for that art. You're responsible for the people who come into your school and choose to learn from you. And so it's a great responsibility. I feel a greater responsibility now that I have declared Jigokan's existence and am now working it as I worked that which I was doing before it. But now it's just different. It changes because I have students now who believe in what it is that I have brought to the world by God's permission. I have people now who love Jigokan and what it represents for them. So my responsibility is simply to give them the best martial arts experience and training that I can give them. And Jigokan right now is that vehicle to do that. So it has changed me because I'm constantly changing. I'm developing it, and I'm seeing little things that I can tweak over here and tweak over there, from techniques to katas to just the approach for, just basically how we're going to stand up in front of an attacker or an assailant and deal with that. You know, just the whole mind that I had to grow up into to be confident enough to say, this is the way for me, and that I'm traveling, and that everyone that's traveling with me, this is the way. So it has caused me to grow like a leader. It has caused me to grow in just so many different ways. But the greatest part of this journey is the freedom. I'm a believer in freedom, justice, and equality. And Jigokan feeds and supports that freedom, justice, and equality, that I'm able to bring it to everyone that Jigokan Jiu-Jitsu touches, everyone who embraces it. I'm able to provide them with freedom, justice, and equality through this martial art.
Have you ever had to adapt your art because the situation didn't match the rules?
You know, since I started training when I started training with my teacher, my final teacher, Grandmaster Abdulaziz, it seemed like in competition, we had to really change what we were learning in the dojo to fit the competition, because a lot of what we were learning in the dojo didn't have like a sport application to it. Or I should say, I think that what it was is that the rules for the competition were tailored more toward karate, but a softer side of karate, where there was not sweeps and throws allowed, and certain strikes and applications just are not allowed in competition, mostly for safety. So I felt more in competition where I had to adapt or change what I would do in the field for competition. So I felt like in competition, I had one hand tied behind my back and I had to hop on one leg, if you will, because I couldn't do things that I believed that would have got me the W faster and easier, and I had to conform to the rules of the competition. And that in and of itself creates a certain level of creativity. You know, you have to adapt. So I have to figure out how not to do this while I want to do it, while it's right there for me to do. I got to do this over here so I can be within the rules.
Tell us about a time when a simple technique didn't work the way it was taught.
You know, simple techniques are the best. There's no simple technique that I was ever taught that didn't work. My experience in that area was more of a simple technique that I could not comprehend or grasp. I had just been promoted to black belt, and my teacher was teaching something that, you know, on the surface didn't seem complicated at all. And I just couldn't get it. And I had just earned my black belt not long before that. I mean, I'm gonna say I received my black belt within the last 30 days of this particular day. And I just could not get the technique. And I got very, very emotional inside about it, because I'm looking around and yellow belts and green belts and people less rank than me who I have to work with and help the teacher to teach. Some of them are getting it, and I'm not getting it, and it made me feel unworthy. And I looked at my teacher. He came over there to me as I was struggling, and he could see how water had actually settled up in my eyes, because I was inside. I was hurting because I felt like I was somehow dishonoring the rank that I had just received from my teacher, because I couldn't get this simple technique. But what it did for me is something that I do for my students today. Because I had that experience, I don't allow my students to feel bad if they don't get something. I simply say it like this: you get it when you get it. A person who just comes in off the street could get a technique or application faster than somebody that may have been in your program for a year. Because maybe that person that's been in your program for a year has only been engaged in this type of combat training for a year. But maybe that person who's just coming into your program from outside, who's never been in a martial arts program, maybe they've been engaged in this type of combat mindset their whole life. So they see the technique differently, because maybe they've had experience. So you get it when you get it.
What's the most dangerous situation you walked away from without throwing a strike?
You know, the most dangerous situation I ever walked away from without throwing a strike is really not a situation at all that's like combative, like with another person. You know, it's really rooted in my moral compass my ethical compass, my spiritual and religious compass, where I'm actually doing battle within myself to walk away from a behavior or behaviors that would not be good for me, that would not be good for, wouldn't be good for me, and it wouldn't be good for other people either. So the real battle for me, I've never had an altercation with a human being where I didn't have to throw a punch if it was an altercation where it escalated to that point. Obviously, there are opportunities where, you know, somebody says something or does something and you just walk away, but that doesn't make it a serious or a dangerous situation. You know what I mean? It's only dangerous if you are foolish enough to engage a fool who wants to do something based off of ego or the emotion. So when I hear your question, I'm not even thinking about a physical, dangerous situation. I'm thinking about more of a spiritual, mental, dangerous situation where I'm definitely throwing punches and kicks and sweeps, and I'm doing all these different spiritual exercises to not act on what I might feel I want to do.
Have you ever had to use your martial arts?
I've absolutely had to use my martial arts in my lifetime, and the very first time that I ever used my martial arts, I was about maybe 15 or 16 years old, and I was training a lot, you know, and I really believed in what I was doing. I was just so happy to be in the martial arts too, but there was this young guy, I don't know what I did to this guy. I don't know how we became adversaries or opponents, but he just seemed to not like me. And the only place I remember seeing him was the basketball court, the YMCA where we played basketball. I don't know, maybe I fouled him hard, maybe I embarrassed him or something on the court. I don't know, but this guy, he kind of had it out for me. And it escalated to a point where he kind of bumped into me. And it was at that point, you know, I was like, you know, I'm walking away. I'm really, really trying to avoid going there with this guy because I'm really not understanding, like, where is this coming from? But then there was, you know, the fateful day. Me and my friend, Philip, may Allah be pleased with him, he passed on. He died during COVID. He was one of the first deaths, if not the first death, here in Chicago from COVID. And so he and I have been friends since 7th grade. He was like a brother to me. And I had even fished him into the Nation of Islam, right? But anyway, we're both about 15 to 16 years old. We're walking down the alley, and lo and behold, here comes this guy. And he's with another guy that I also knew, but the guy that he was with was kind of like a tall, bigger guy than us, and an athlete as well. And I guess he decided that today was the day he wanted to make good on all of the threatening and offensive behavior that he had, you know, been doing, you know, in my direction. So I can remember the stance I got into. I can remember the whole thing. I can remember his facial expression, how he looking, but he just didn't believe. And I whooped the hell out of him so easily, so convincingly. I actually killed this guy's desire to even do anything else. I mean, I saw the light in his eyes just go out for aggression toward me. And what happened was, what the funny part is that my friend Philip was like watching this, and then when the other guy, who we all knew, after he saw me whoop the dude, I don't even know the guy's name. You know, he kind of like looked and like stepped like he was about to, you know, kind of get into the fight. And me, I was like, I looked at Phil and said, okay, this is going to be like Bruce Lee in Game of Death. You know, because Bruce Lee had to fight this real tall guy, you know, at the end of the movie. And I was about to destroy that guy too, because now my confidence is at an all-time level, because it's like I'm on the outside of my body watching me fight this dude with karate. If I could just say it that way, with karate. I mean, rounds kick, side kick, reverse punch. I mean, it was the best exercise of what I had been training in a real situation with somebody who's trying to hurt me, but couldn't even hit me. I moved around him so easily, so smoothly, and it wasn't even close. It just wasn't even close. And that was my very first time using karate, but it wouldn't be my last time using my art, because I had other instances as I grew older, as into like an adult male, where I had to use my martial arts, and it was pretty much the same situation, but I had matured, so my understanding was not just about karate. My understanding was just about combat, period. And so, yeah, I have had to use my martial arts in a real life situation.
Have you ever had to step in to protect someone?
I remember I had to intervene in a situation where I was at the mall with a couple of my students. They were younger sister students. I'm gonna say like teenagers. One was like maybe 16, the other one was maybe like 19 years old. And we were at the mall going to pick up something for the school or whatever. And there were two young black girls fighting. I say young girls, they were probably like 18, 19, maybe 19, 20 years old, these two girls who were fighting. And so, you know, when I observed the fight of the two sisters, you know, I jump in and I break them apart, right? To break up the fight. And then I guess because I stepped in to break up the fight, then the people who were watching the fight decide, oh, well, maybe we should break this up too. You know how people are. Everybody wants to see a fight, but nobody wants to be fighting, right? So I break up the fight, and then all of a sudden some Caucasian police officer, small guy, he couldn't have been maybe taller than he may have been like maybe 5'5", 5'6", wasn't a very tall guy. And I guess once we separated the two young ladies, he grabs one in the process of the separation. I think maybe as I was separating, he gets involved. He's trying to grab one too. And I think that, you know, maybe in the process, maybe he got hit or something or slapped by somebody. And guess what? I did too. My glasses, I had some Ralph Lauren sunglasses. You know, I'm into sunglasses, stuff like that. But my glasses kind of got slapped off my face with them trying to hit each other. They weren't trying to hit me. But I'm stepping in like a savior. So I'm not going to get angry and then become a part of the fight. So I didn't care about that. So I grabbed one. But this officer, the one he grabs, he cuffs her. He gets control of her and he cuffs her and he takes her down. And while I'm, you know, picking up my glasses, putting them back on, because the other girl is being held by somebody else, I observed the officer kick the young lady in her stomach while her hands are cuffed behind her back. This is the real intervening part. I didn't intervene on somebody's behalf that was not standing up for themselves. I intervened on the behalf of my little young black sister who was handcuffed, subdued, no longer a threat, and then this rogue police officer kicks my little black sister in her stomach. Well, at that point, the man in me, the Muslim in me, the follower of the Untold Muhammad in me just came right to the forefront, and I jumped right into this officer's face. And I said, don't you dare hit her again. I said, she's cuffed, you arrest her, you take her away, but you are not going to put your hands on her again. And he turned to me like, sir, you're going to have to back up. I said, I ain't going nowhere. And you're not going to do that to her again. And he looking at me, and then people start trying to calm down now. I said, y'all saw what he did. He kicked that girl in her stomach while she's handcuffed. I can't look at that and not say or do something. So people trying to calm me down. I said, man, let me tell you something. Do it again. I just made it plain. Do it again. In my presence. You will not do it again. That white police officer looked at me, looked around the situation. People were, especially black people, they were like, what is this? Like, what's going on? My two students, Shannon and Sandra, they were observing, their eyes were bucked. And that little rogue, cowardly police officer, he picked her up and he took her away. And there's more to that story, but I just leave it right there because he came back for me, but he didn't come at me like he came at her. I guess after he got in the car, he decided he wanted to come back, and he came back with more police. He came back with backup. And that's a whole nother story. I've answered the question. I intervened as we're supposed to do as martial artists, as men. In the face of cruelty, we have to know how to stand up. And martial arts at least gave me some tools to have on my belt, some weaponry to support my heart and my mind that was fixed on intervening and not going down, without a fight. If it was going to go down, it was going to go down, but he was going to go down before me. Because I had already decided in my mind that this is a reason that little sister that I did not know from a can of paint, I just knew she was of my family, my community of black people. She was only about maybe 18, 19 years old. This adult white male police officer couldn't do his job and simply arrest the girl and understand that if he got smacked, scratched, whatever in the process of doing his job, that's par for the course. You understand? Like, I didn't get upset and slap nobody because my Ralph Lauren sunglasses got knocked off my face. I approached the situation from a position of love for the two that are fighting. So I'm breaking up a fight of my community, my culture, my people. And so since love was the motivating factor, a little slap, got my glasses knocked off. It didn't matter because I knew that they weren't trying to hit me. I didn't feel any threat. I felt nothing but I want to break this up. And so that's why I ended it.
What lesson from that moment should every serious martial artist hear?
I believe that the lesson from me intervening in that moment where I stepped in to really defend, the young lady, is that a coward dies 1,000 times, but a man will only die once. The lesson is to grow morally, spiritually, with greater love, so that God can use that love to bolster your confidence that you can intervene. And since you're riding in on that, on the greatest power, which is love, and God is love, so if love is present, then God is present. And if you operate on that, with the tools that we get in the dojo, I'm talking about the physical skills, then you can fight more like a brave, as opposed to thinking about how you're unequipped. But growing spiritually first and falling in love with being a human being and the value of human beings and protecting human beings from the unrighteous cruelty of people who have a desire to break the peace. We're supposed to be peacemakers. Martial artists should be peacemakers. People think that martial arts makes you more violent, but that's only if you have a bad teacher who doesn't balance your lessons with the Bushido code or something of a moral compass, so that you say, I've given you this gun, but you don't pull it on everybody. You don't just shoot everybody because you have the gun. In fact, you don't want to shoot the gun because you know that when you shoot the gun, that you're not aiming to injure them, you're aiming to eliminate the threat of them. Make sense? So the lesson that we should all take from that is to fight with heroic courage, to be able to stand up for what you believe, and if you believe that you're standing up for freedom, justice, and equality or righteousness, that you can go in on the love for those principles, and that even if you get hurt or harmed, you do it not because you're expecting to prevail, you're doing it because the truth of what you're fighting for or defending is greater than a win or a loss. Because ultimately you believe that you will win, and those who think that way and operate and act that way will be the winners in the end.
What part of yourself lives in Jigokan? Not the technique, but the lessons that were taught and learned from pain, success, and failure.
Well, that's a very powerful question. I believe that the part of me that lives in Jigokan, it's all woven all through Jigokan. Jigokan is really the summary of my time spent in the classroom with my teachers. Grandmaster Abdul Aziz, formerly Grandmaster Anthony Muhammad, Dr. Moses Powell. The time spent with them in these different rooms, Sophia John Davis, Hanshi Larry Tankson, and of course my very, very first real teacher of martial arts, Sensei Gregory Myrick. That Jigokan is so I'm all up in it, every part of it. The pain, the training, the suffering, the sacrifice, through these great teachers that I had, right? And then of course, to walk on their path and then begin to cast my own shadow. I'm in every part of Jigokan. My mind, my spirit, my desire for freedom, justice, and equality in the martial arts, particularly or especially for those who come and train directly with me, either in person or online with me. I want them to feel as well as know this is different. It may have some similarities to that which came before it. It's obviously connected to that which came before it, but it's very, very different.
What does Jigokan allow your students to become that you were never given or allowed to become as a student?
Man, that's such a beautiful question. Jigokan just allows for my students to come into a martial arts environment and learn a martial art that is not only practical or natural, but the teacher. See, everything begins with the leadership. The teachers, the idea in the mind of the teacher for freedom, justice, equality, for reward for your work, advancement for your engagement and your you know, when you do it and you learn it and you practice it and you just jump in, both feet. My students and those who are trained in Jigokan know that there is the opportunity for advancement and mastery, and they know that in Jigokan that if you know the material, and the material says this, and you can do it efficiently and competently, that there's no politics, there's no bureaucracy, there is no hidden agenda of the teacher to somehow, limit your success. So that's why I say it begins with the mind of the teacher. My experiences, they're vast with my different instructors. Now, all of my instructors were not committed to making people operate in ignorance of how to move forward. You hear teachers say stuff like this: just keep doing what you're doing. But that don't really help, because if I'm already at the limit of what you say you require for rank, and then I don't receive the next instruction, and you just say, just keep doing what you're doing, just say that you don't have anything else to give me, and that now you just want to watch me and how I handle what I have been given. Just say that. Say it's clear. I think Jigokan is clear. I think that the mind, the idea, and the teacher, and the head, the Grand Master of Jigokan, I believe is clear. And there's no confusion with it, because I understand that confused people do nothing. And so I don't seek to confuse people. I don't seek to rob people. I don't seek to just try to marry people to my plow, my personal plow, forever. In Jigokan, I kick you out. Once you've mastered the lessons that I have for you to master, I'm gonna kick you out. I'm gonna have you now go and take what you mastered and then become a benefit to the world, to our community, to our people, to the planet. I'm not going to try to host you in and under my tent, just so I can say, look. If you really do what you're supposed to do as a teacher, as a grandmaster, a master, professor, whatever you call yourself, if you really do your job, your students will love you regardless. And the kicking out is not like kicking out like, okay, I don't want you no more. It's more like your 27-year-old son who you didn't already put through college. He can't just live in your house, putting his name on the orange juice that he bought talking about, I'm a man. No, get out there and be a man.
What do your students feel in Jigokan that they don't necessarily have the words to explain?
I think that in Jigokan, the students who train directly with me and online, I think that what they feel is a sense of belonging. They feel a sense of this doesn't feel like something outside of myself. My students feel like Jigokan speaks to what they have longed for inside of themselves for a long time, because the lessons are not just martial arts or combative lessons. The lessons are cut and balanced with spiritual lessons and ethical and moral lessons and societal examples to help to give them balance. I think that the students who train with me are gaining a sense of balance for their own lives. And Jigokan is like the tool. It's not the real balance. The real balance comes from the God. But if the God is in Jigokan, and the God is in Jigokan, because I don't say that it came from me, I say that it came from Allah, God. Inspired in me, and then He used me, or He's using me, and my students who are right here with me in the inception of it, in the growth, because now it's been given birth, but now it's evolving. So my students who are working with me to help it to evolve, and it's evolving within them, are feeling a liveliness. They are enlivened by the art. It doesn't seem old, outdated, it doesn't seem antiquated, it doesn't seem subjugating. It seems like it's a freeing type of expression and activity. But that comes from the mind of the person who's presenting it, from the heart that God is using to bring it to its, perfection. And I don't even say that it would be perfected in my lifetime, but we're gonna take it pretty far if it pleases God.
What do you see in your students that tells you Jigokan is working? Something deeper than skill and performance.
What I see in my students that lets me know that Jigokan is working, I put the air quotes on working, is I'm watching their passion, their love, their engagement, their willingness. The hearts are open, the minds are open to receiving. And that's what lets me know first it is working. But it's not working because it is working, it's working because we are working it. We are putting effort into it. We want to, how are we going to prove this copy? How are we going to prove this technique? How are we going to prove this method, this way, right? So having individuals who are willing to sojourn with you to prove something. And I told my students, I told them early on, after we declared Jigokan, I told them early on, Jigokan would not be proven through me, it would be proven through you. And I think that is something that is in a lot of them, and they feel empowered and imbued with the spirit. Like, yeah, it's gonna be proven through me. I wanna prove it. And you get a lot of people like that. That's a very powerful thing. Because in the dojo, you only have two types of students. You have those who believe that they can, and those who believe that they can't. And they both right. Just so happens that at this time for Jigokan, we got a lot of people who believe that they can. And that's what Jigokan is doing for them.
What is your favorite technique and why does it represent you?
My favorite technique, I don't have a favorite technique. I have a mindset about what I believe works and does not work. So my base is my movement. My favorite type of movement are movements that take me off the line of attack, that place me in position to get off what I need to get off to protect myself, withstanding what has came at me. So my favorite techniques are techniques that put me in the safe space, on the side of the opponent or behind them. Those are my favorite techniques. I have oft-repeated movements that I do to help to permeate that movement in my flow. So you can see the system that I'm using to be successful in combat. For the favorite technique, that may translate more when you're doing like a demonstration, because I don't prearrange my demonstrations. If I go out to do a demo, I'm not going to say I'm going to do technique 3, 17, 62, and 50. I don't do that. I actually just move from whatever the attack is. And because I have permeated or burned into my mental, my spiritual, and my physical movement a certain thing, when I do a technique, well, maybe this technique comes out a lot, or maybe that technique comes out a lot. But I actively work to not repeat myself, which is kind of hard to do, because if you have a system, you have to repeat yourself, especially if you have numbered techniques. But not repeating myself in the sense that, okay, this time it's a little different. But the base, the foundation, the root doesn't change. The root remains the same. The foundation is the same. Get off the line. But what happens after I get off the line will always vary, depending on where I am off the line, what the attack was, and what it is that has to come up out of me to subdue that person as quickly as possible. So I don't really have a favorite technique, but I favor the mindset of getting off the line, striking at the same time that I'm moving, hitting that person in areas that they didn't think that they could be hit, or that no one would expect to get hit, to produce a certain type of reaction from them to lead to the next and the next and the next and the next, until I have eventually subdued them competently, and safely for myself.
What is Jigokan ultimately preparing people for? The moment that they hope never comes, or the person that they hope to become?
I believe that Jigokan is preparing students for life. I believe that Jigokan is preparing students for combat in a very natural way. Yes, nobody wants to have to use their martial art. Nobody ever I hope I have to use it. Because if you hope that you have to use it, life is fair. most of us that would think that way hope that we have to use it against somebody that we can overcome. But what if you have to use it against somebody that you can't overcome? Jigokan is such a natural way of thinking and approaching martial arts. It has your physical components, it has your mental components, it has your spiritual components, but at the root and the base and the foundation of Jigokan is the love for freedom, justice, and equality. And in martial arts, that really has not existed with the old guard. And so a new era, a new mind had to come to confirm that which came before it that was of good, and crush that which came before it which was not good. But it's a war for the mind. It's a war in the mind. And it's a war against the mind, the people who would rather not give freedom, justice, and equality.
Outlives you, right? If and when Jigokan outlives you physically, what do you hope goes untouched and never diluted?
Well, if it pleases Allah, God, Jigokan will absolutely outlive me. In the sense that it was inspired in me through God, and since I believe that it will not be perfected in my lifetime, even though authorized official techniques, movement, philosophies, ethics, rules, procedures will be established. It will definitely be established. But the perfection of it is only going to be known through those people who train in it with an open mind and an open heart, give themselves over to it, and then embody Jigokan. Jigokan is not a religion. Jigokan doesn't subscribe to that type of, for lack of a better word, dogma. I don't want people looking at me and saying, if he dies or, overcome in some way, that they should now, turn away from Jigokan. It's kind of like, we just have to understand that I don't see, like you're one of my students, if 25 years from now, when I, if it pleases Allah, would be 80 years old, and you have an expression of Jigokan that is something that I didn't necessarily give you, but maybe was inspired in you, I don't look at that as a dilution. That's not diluting art. That's not changing or taking. It's evolving. The human being evolves. The world evolves. The planet evolves. It has to cleanse itself at a certain point. At one point, it was brand new. There was life on the planet that is not, there's no longer on the planet right now. It's supposed to evolve. Like Jigokan is a continuation of the legacy of Sanukis. Sanukis has a very important part in my heart. It plays a very important role in my mind. But Jigokan is not Sanukas. But you can see the influence of Sanukas. But my desire is ultimately to perfect that which came before me. Sanukas was complete yet incomplete. You only know the value of a martial art by not just only its longevity, but its desired perfection from its practitioners, from those masters, from the love for the progenitor or the founder of that art or that system. And then a desire for having a pure form of it without limiting it to, well, there's nothing else that Sanukas can do beyond this point. And so that you train, and then after you train all of the requirements, okay, so now where does it go? Does everybody just constantly repeat the same 500 techniques or whatever is involved in it? And now, okay, you've mastered Sanukas, so now we got 1 million masters of Sanukas. Is Sanukas still growing outside of enrollment? It has to grow. What I would like to never see change in Jigokan is the mind of freedom, justice, and equality, and to actually allow the practitioners, after a certain level of mastery, to evolve it. I want people to evolve it beyond me into the future, but after they have mastered the formula of Jigokan, right? Once you master the formula, then you qualify to, okay, what would happen if we take this part of the DNA and do this with it? You follow what I'm saying? What would happen then? You follow what I'm saying? The origin of the God, the first man, the way he came about is not the way that you and I come about, but the way that we come about is it's very similar, but the time for you and me to come about is not, 6 trillion years. It's 10 months, it's 40 weeks. The process of going into the darkness and the light sparking in the darkness and then becoming, sperm mixed with ovum and finding a firm resting place in the gestation process and evolving from an embryo into a fetus and then coming forth 10 months later. I mean, how many people would be on the planet if it took 6 trillion years for every one of us to come? I don't know. It just seems like a long time. So, Jigokan has to live. Jigokan has to evolve. Diluted would be taking out the freedom or the justice or the equality. That would be making it, That would be making it into like why would somebody want to do that? That would be like making it into something corrupt or evil, right? Somebody changing some of the tenets that we establish that support the freedom, the justice, and equality. That I don't want to change. I don't want anybody to touch that. I don't want anybody to touch the quote unquote like the 10 commandments of Jigokan. I don't want that touched. Not the restrictive laws, but the laws of Jigokan and the rules for being in good standing with this mind and this thinking. I don't want that to change. When I'm going, whenever God takes me, I want that because I believe that if it's being inspired by God, it should live on forever. I mean, because it's rooted in justice, freedom, justice, and equality. It's rooted in righteousness. It's rooted in truth. Right? Make sense? So, Jigokan will live beyond me, but it can only live beyond me if the principles that undergird it and support it I maintain.
To my final bonus question. After all that being said, I asked you what your name was, but I didn't ask you who is Professor Lemuel Muhammad. That's my question.
Okay, and that's a very, very great question, because the man or the woman, the person is not their title. We are not our titles. We are not our ranks. We are human beings. Lemuel Sultan Muhammad is a very structured fellow. He's a man who's interested in the future. He's a man who's interested in doing good, who wants to be right. Not right like you're wrong and I'm right. I want to be righteous. I want to be of righteousness. I want to bring forth righteousness. I want to live in a righteous world and environment. And that's going to take a lot of time to manifest, because the world manifests first here and here. I may be remembered for bringing Jigokan, but I want to be remembered more for making people love what I'm standing for. You know, so that when I'm remembered by the grace of Allah, if I'm remembered for how I impacted the lives of people and made their lives better. That's who Lemuel Muhammad is. In addition to the Grand Master of Jigokan, the progenitor of this school and these schools that are going to exist. I'm just a regular old simple fella who wants to be able to take care of himself, his family, and his community. I want to be able to help people. I love helping people. I wasn't that way when I was in my 20s. I mean, I wanted to do the work that I'm a part of, but I didn't feel it deep like I feel it now. I love helping people. I love helping people to get what it is that they are after. A person comes to me and asks me for my counsel or my advice or my thoughts on the thing. I can always do a good job because I always say in the name of God in my mind before I even start talking to him. I always approach it from what I know and what I don't know, I don't speak about. You know, as you get older, these are things that you learn to do that you don't necessarily do in your teens and your 20s, and sometimes even in your 30s. But I'm 54 years old now. I'll be 55 if it pleases God on my next birth anniversary. And the way I think today is so much different than the way I thought in my younger years. About martial arts, about life, about business, about relationships with people, people who matter to me, people who don't matter to me, you know. And it's not that those individuals don't matter to me, but maybe their mind, which causes them to behave a certain type of way, I don't concern myself with it. You know, every now and then I will tie a string around one of my fingers. And in like recognition that only time I recognize that a person of that thinking, that mind, that behavior even exists is if I look down at my finger and see the string. But they don't bother me. And I end on this note. I believe that my ladder is ascending to heights that my opponents, my enemies, my adversaries, those people who would love to topple me in one way or another, who would love to conquer me, I believe that my ladder is ascending to a level that they can't cut off my blessings. And I'm no great dude, man. I got so many flaws, I got so many issues and challenges in my personal life, but I don't pretend to be perfect. I never pretend to be perfect. I talk about mine to help my students to know that even the man that they might be looking at and they think is this or that, he got problems too. And he can talk about his to help us to get better with ours, even as I'm working on my own. So that's who Lemuel Muhammad is. He is that guy.